That bloated, gassy, almost burning feeling after a meal, even when you ate something totally normal. Or that raw, hollowed-out sensation in your stomach during a stressful week. You've felt it. Here's what's strange though. Your stomach acid is strong enough to dissolve meat, bone, even metal, given enough time. So why doesn't it dissolve the stomach itself? Every day, that acid sits inches from living tissue, and somehow the tissue survives, completely intact, meal after meal, year after year. There's a hidden shield at work, and a repair system running in the background that most people never learn about. So let's answer the real question. Why doesn't your stomach digest itself? That acid isn't occasional. It isn't reserved for big meals or heavy dinners. It's a constant presence, working around the clock, whether you notice your stomach or not, which makes the mystery even stranger. Something this corrosive is sitting inches away from soft living tissue, non-stop, and somehow that tissue never breaks down, not once, not after decades of meals. So the question isn't really about your stomach acting up sometimes. It's about how it survives itself, every single day, without ever losing the fight. Let's start with the acid itself, because it's not exaggerating to call it dangerous. Stomach acid can drop to a pH of around 1.5. For comparison, that's strong enough to strip metal over time, strong enough to break down bone. This is not a mild digestive juice doing gentle work. It's an aggressive chemical environment, and it's on purpose. Your stomach needs acid that strong to break down proteins and to kill off bacteria that ride in on your food. Weak acid would mean weaker digestion and a much easier path for pathogens to get through. So the strength itself isn't the mystery. The mystery is what stands between that strength and the tissue holding it. The first answer is mucus, not a thin film, but a coat several cells thick, lining the entire inside of the stomach wall like a wetsuit. This mucus isn't just sitting there for texture. It physically separates the acid from the cells underneath it. Acid splashes and churns above it, but it doesn't make direct contact with the living tissue below. Think of it less like a coating and more like a barrier wall, built specifically to take the impact so the structure behind it never has to. But mucus alone wouldn't be enough, because acid is persistent. It would eventually work its way through a purely physical barrier if that was the only defense. So there's a second layer working inside that mucus, a bicarbonate-rich fluid. Bicarbonate is a natural neutralizer. As acid seeps toward the tissue, it meets this bicarbonate and gets chemically neutralized right at that boundary, right where it would otherwise meet living cells. This creates something close to a buffered microclimate. A few millimeters above, the environment is aggressively acidic. Right at the cell surface, it's neutral enough for the tissue to survive undisturbed. That shift happens within a razor-thin space, which is honestly one of the most precise pieces of engineering happening in your body right now, and you never feel it working. This is where the picture starts to make more sense. It's not that your stomach lining is naturally more resistant than skin or muscle or any other tissue. It's not built from tougher material. It's protected by an active chemical process running continuously, every hour, whether you're eating or not. The stomach didn't evolve a way to make its acid weaker, because weaker acid would compromise digestion and defense. Instead, it evolved a dedicated shield strong enough to contain something it still needs at full strength. That's the trade-off. Keep the acid dangerous, but build a wall precise enough to control it. Now here's the part most people never hear about, the part that goes beyond the shield. Even with mucus and bicarbonate working together, some minor wear and tear on the lining is inevitable. A little erosion here, a little irritation there. This is where the second mechanism kicks in, and it's just as important as the barrier itself. The cells that make up your stomach lining are replaced entirely every 3 to 5 days, not repaired eventually, replaced on a rolling basis, constantly. Old cells are shed, new ones rise to take their place, and any small-scale acid damage gets cycled out before it has a chance to become a real problem. Your stomach isn't just defending itself, it's rebuilding itself, on a loop, faster than almost any other tissue in your body. So when that barrier is intact and that renewal cycle is running normally, the acid and the tissue can coexist indefinitely without conflict. But the system depends on that barrier staying strong, which means it's also possible for the barrier to weaken. This is where ulcers come from. Not from the acid suddenly becoming more aggressive, but from the mucus barrier itself breaking down, commonly due to an H. pylori infection or heavy repeated NSAID use. Once that shield thins out in a specific spot, acid stops being neutralized there. It reaches tissue directly, and instead of a protected surface constantly renewing itself, you get real damage accumulating faster than it can be repaired. Heartburn tells a different story, and this is where your earlier discomfort starts making sense. Heartburn isn't the mucus bicarbonate shield failing on the job. The shield is still doing its work exactly where it's supposed to, inside the stomach. Heartburn happens when acid escapes upward, past the stomach, into the esophagus, an area that was never built with that same specialized barrier. That tissue doesn't have the same mucus coat or bicarbonate buffering the stomach has, so when acid ends up there, even briefly, it burns, because it's meeting tissue with none of the stomach's built-in defenses. And then there's the raw, hollowed-out feeling during a stressful week, which turns out to be connected to the same barrier in a slower, quieter way. Chronic stress triggers hormones that, over time, thin the protective mucus layer. It's not one bad meal doing this. It's a sustained internal state, wearing down the shield gradually, the same way constant friction wears down any protective surface faster than it can renew. So if chronic stress is one of the things that thins the mucus shield, that means the shield has a natural off switch too. Not a switch you flip directly, but one you influence. Stress hormones flood your system when your body thinks it's under threat, and that same alarm state is what wears down the mucus barrier over time. Which means a calmer body state, even briefly, is one of the few inputs you actually have some control over here. You can't tell your stomach lining to regenerate faster. You can't manually thicken your mucus layer, but you can influence how loudly that alarm system is ringing right before you eat. Here's the low-friction version of that idea. Before eating, especially on a day that's already felt tense or rushed, pause for 3 slow breaths. Not a ritual, not a production, just 3 breaths, slower than your normal pace, before the first bite. That small pause sends a signal through your nervous system that shifts you slightly out of alarm mode. And since alarm mode is part of what thins the barrier meant to protect your stomach from its own acid, easing that signal, even briefly, is one of the only direct ways to support a system that otherwise runs completely without your input. It helps to see this in proper context. None of this means your stomach is fragile, or that it's one bad week away from failing. It means the opposite. It's running a repair system most people never think about, rebuilding its own lining every 3 to 5 days, cell by cell, without a single conscious decision from you. The mucus and bicarbonate shield is holding back something strong enough to affect metal every hour, and it's succeeding. Your stomach isn't asking to be fixed. It's already doing the work. The discomfort you feel sometimes isn't proof that the system is broken. It's more like a signal flare, information worth noticing, not evidence of failure. So here's a small experiment. Nothing clinical, nothing tracked in an app. Just pay attention. Over the next week, before meals on stressful days, take those 3 slow breaths. Then notice, gently, without expecting anything specific. Does the bloated or burning feeling after eating show up quite as often? Does that raw, hollowed-out sensation during a stressful afternoon feel slightly less sharp? You're not testing a cure. You're simply observing whether easing one known trigger, chronic stress signaling, changes anything about how your stomach feels in the hours that follow. No promises either way, just noticing. What's worth remembering is where this all started. Acid strong enough to dissolve meat, bone, even metal, sitting inches from living tissue, every single day, without ever destroying it. That was the mystery, and the answer wasn't that your stomach is uniquely tough. It's that it's covered in a mucus layer several cells thick, buffered by bicarbonate right where acid meets living cells, and backed by a rebuilding crew, replacing that lining every 3 to 5 days. 2 systems, chemical and physical, working in constant coordination, all without a single thought from you. Your stomach rebuilds its own armor every few days without you noticing. That's happening right now, whether you're aware of it or not. So the least you can do, on the days that already feel heavy, is give it 3 calm breaths before asking it to go to work. It's a small gesture, not a fix. But it lines up with the one lever chronic stress actually gives you, and it's a fitting way to acknowledge a system that's been quietly protecting you, meal after meal, for your entire life.